Billionaire joked, "Open my safe, get $100 million. A poor black girl solved a code that no one else could crack. The billionaire thought it was a joke, a flashy challenge, a giant steel safe, and a promise so big no one really believed it. Whoever cracked the code would walk away with $100 million. Experts, geniuses, and tech teams tried and failed under the cameras and bright lights. Then a quiet, broke black girl from the wrong side of town stepped forward and did the impossible. But what happened after she won was far darker than the game itself, because some people never intended for her to keep it. Amara's world was small, a cramped apartment above a noisy corner store, a bus ride to an underfunded school, and long evenings wiping fingerprints from glass doors in the rich part of the city. She moved between two realities every day, peeling paint of her own hallway, and the marble lobbies she cleaned but never belonged to. Numbers were the only place she felt powerful. Since she was little, patterns calmed her in a way nothing else did. While sirens echoed outside her window, she filled cheap notebooks with sequences, codes, and puzzles copied from old library books. Teachers called her gifted, then watched as budget cuts snatched away the classes that could have pushed her further. On her way to work, she passed the billionaire's face on giant screens downtown. His towers pierced the sky, his name plated on buildings she scrubbed at night. He was the kind of man the world listened to when he laughed. One week, everyone seemed to be talking about his latest stunt, a giant, unbreakable safe. A ridiculous prize, a challenge open to all that somehow never included people from blocks like hers. Experts and celebrities were invited. People like Amara remained invisible, mopping their footprints off the floor. She noticed the dates, the location, the building. She already had a keycard to clean after hours. She didn't know it yet, but the same quiet obsession that helped her survive would soon drag her into his spotlight, into a fight she was never meant to win. The safe arrived in the middle of the night, long after the cameras and executives had gone home. Amara watched from behind her cleaning cart as workers in branded jackets rolled in a massive block of steel and glass, floodlights turning it into something almost holy. The billionaire's logo was stamped across the front, beneath the bold promise the whole city now knew. "Open my safe, take $100 million. It was the first time she'd been close enough to touch it. The rules were everywhere, a public challenge, any person allowed to try. One code per contestant during the final live event at the tower. The billionaire called it an opportunity for the world's brightest minds. The ads showed polished faces, expensive suits, tech founders, famous academics. No one from corridors like hers, no one with uniforms like hers. At 3 a.m, when only the hum of the building remained, Amara circled the safe, studying it. On the glass screen were rotating symbols, numbers, and what looked like fragments of old maps. A thin envelope had been tossed aside near the loading dock, bearing the event's logo. Inside, she found a printout of the official clue packet, probably dropped by an assistant who never imagined someone like her would care. Back home, she spread those pages across her bed, next to her worn notebooks. The clues weren't random. They were coordinates, dates, neighborhood names. At first, it felt like a game built for people with degrees in time. But as she traced the lines and dates, something ugly surfaced. The maps were familiar. They matched the red lines she had once seen in a documentary about how banks refused loans to black families. Areas marked as high risk, neighborhoods starved of investment, boxed in by highways and industrial zones. Her own block appeared in the pattern like a wound. The billionaire's game was built on the history that had crushed families like hers. She realized the numbers on the safe corresponded to those same neighborhoods, the dates to policies that had trapped generations in poverty. To most experts, it looked like an abstract puzzle. To Amara, it was a story she had lived in every eviction notice, every broken school ceiling, every friend whose parents worked 3 jobs and still fell behind. Night after night, she pieced together the logic. The pattern wasn't just mathematical, it was moral, a twisted display of power from a man who had built his empire on land once deemed worthless when black people lived on it. The code hid in plain sight, assuming no one from those lines would ever stand in front of that safe. She found it, or she thought she did. A sequence emerged from the chaos, so simple and cruel it made her sick. While her mother slept in the next room, Amara stared at the numbers that could rip them out of poverty, prove how rigged everything really was. The day of the live event, she wasn't invited as a guest. Her name had never made it through the online registration. An error message had dismissed her attempt, blaming capacity, though she knew others with the right schools and addresses had been accepted last minute. So she went in through the back, like always, her keycard granting access as staff. Her badge read cleaner, not contestant. The lobby was transformed into a spectacle. Cameras, velvet ropes, glossy stages, contestants in designer clothes laughed under bright lights, rehearsing their theories, while producers fussed over microphones. Amara moved along the edges, invisible, pushing her cart, pretending to adjust trash cans and wipe fingerprints off glass that was already clean. Security watched her more closely than they watched anyone near the safe. Every time she paused to look at the code screen, a guard's eyes found her. Other workers wore the same uniform, but it was her braided hair, her dark skin, her worn shoes that drew the suspicion tighter. Contestants wandered freely. She was reminded with every glance that this world had already decided where she belonged. Still, when the host announced the final round, when the billionaire stepped onto the stage to laughter and applause, when the safe lights flickered to signal the last attempts, Amara felt the numbers pressing against her ribs like a heartbeat. One by one, the chosen failed. The safe stage shut. The billionaire's smile widened. The crowd thrilled at the drama of unsolved genius. Amara gripped the handle of her cart, the code burning in her mind, knowing that if she stepped forward, everything would change one way or another. Amara did not remember deciding to move. One moment she was gripping the cart. The next, she was walking toward the velvet rope, toward the blinding lights, the safe looming like a wall at the center of the room. The crowd noticed her uniform first. Heads turned, eyes narrowing, cameras tilting in curiosity and irritation. Contestants who had failed stood comfortable in their suits, sipping drinks, already being comforted and praised for brave attempts. She, in her faded polo and scuffed shoes, was met with suspicion. Security stepped into her path. Hands hovered near radios and belts. For a second, it seemed over before it began. Then producers saw the tension, the optics, the potential spectacle. A decision flickered across their faces. The rope opened. She climbed onto the stage, still smelling of cleaning chemicals, the billionaire watching with an amused, dismissive smile that said this was harmless entertainment. A poor black girl, a prop to prove the safe was unbreakable. The screen glowed in front of her, spinning symbols and fractured maps. In her mind, the pattern snapped into place again, red lines carving through communities, numbers tied to laws that had stolen futures from people who looked like her. She thought of her mother's hands, cracked from double shifts. She thought of the nights doing homework under a flickering bulb because the power bill was always late. Her fingers hovered above the keypad. She entered the code. Each press felt heavier than the last. The crowd grew restless, some amused, some annoyed. For a heartbeat after the final number, nothing happened. The entire room held its breath. Then the safe unlocked. Lights surged. A sharp chime cut through the silence. The reinforced door hissed and began to swing open, revealing stacks of documents and cash, rows of glittering assets the billionaire's empire made visible. Gasps rippled through the hall. Screens flashed confirmation. The challenge had been beaten. For a single stunned second, Amara stood as the undisputed winner. Then everything changed. The billionaire's smile collapsed. His eyes hardened, calculating and cold. Sound technicians cut the music. Security swarmed the stage, not in celebration, but in containment. Hands seized her arms, fingers digging into her skin, as if she were a criminal, not a champion. The narrative flipped in real time. Producers shouted into headsets. Someone ordered the cameras to cut. Someone else barked about protocols. Breaches, insider access. The same people who had cheered elite failures now questioned whether this black girl could possibly have solved what their chosen minds could not, unless she cheated. She watched the open safe from the corner of her eye as they dragged her back, wealth and power stacked neatly in the shadows, so close it almost felt like another cruel joke. Around her, phones were already raised. Strangers recorded the moment security treated a cleaner as a threat for doing exactly what the billionaire had dared the world to do. In that instant, Amara understood. The game had never been designed for her to win, but the cameras had seen everything. The only question now was whether the truth would be buried. Like so many stories before hers, or whether this time the world would refuse to look away. They kept her in a side room for hours. No celebration, no confetti. just bright interrogation lights and people in suits circling her like she was a problem to be fixed. They called it a security review. They questioned how a cleaner could solve what experts had missed. They pointed to her keycard, to her access to the building. 2 technicalities about staff not being eligible on the stage outside. Workers shut the safe and reset the scene as if nothing had happened. By the time they let her go, the official story was already shifting. The broadcast cut the moment she stepped forward. The Billionaire's team released a polished statement about an attempted breach and remaining vigilant. They never used her name, but other cameras had stayed on. Clips of Amara opening the safe spread online within hours. People slowed the footage frame by frame. The hesitation of security before grabbing her. The open door behind her. The Billionaire's face changing the instant he realized who had won. Viewers began to notice the puzzle's ugly core. Historians and activists recognized the Redland maps in the code. Families from those same neighborhoods pointed to their streets on paused screens. Comment sections filled with anger that the history used to lock them out of opportunity had become a billionaire's party trick. Amara went back to work. For a while, lawyers and organizers found her. So did threats. The company's offer came quietly, money far smaller than the prize, tied to a thick agreement to never speak, to accept that she had not technically been a contestant at all. It would have changed everything for her family. It would also have erased what happened. She said no. She did not become rich. She did become visible. Her story fueled protests outside the tower, investigations into the Billionaire's dealings, hard conversations about how often the rules move when black people start to win. The safe was supposed to prove that genius is rare. Instead, it showed something else, that when a poor black girl breaks the code, the real lock is not metal, but power. So the question is not whether people like Amara are smart enough to win. The question is, when they do, will we fight for them more? Let the door slam shut and pretend it never opened.